Organissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today. Organissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, with your host, Hurricane H. New day, new show, great topic, not a new one, and definitely not a new guest. Someone we've seen, we've heard, we've interacted with, someone that put me to sleep. Yeah, that sounds funny, right? Someone that you actually followed in a series called was it Hypnodiversions?
Oh yeah,
Diversions.
the Hypnotherapist podcast. I had that for a little bit, but moved on from that little project. I suppose it might get restarted one day, but
Hypnodiversions. It was good, man. I love that series, man. I mean, it was a few of them, but they were powerful.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, so again, I guess we already introduced you away.
Oh yeah, I'm a known factor.
yeah. Robert Parker and Twin Ravens Hypnotherapy and Research. He's by the way, not only I've watched his work and we had his shows on the network, but also I actually worked with him outside in my corporate side of the business, and we had him come on and do a series of programs for our teams. It was pretty interesting. I think it was 8 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, or 6 weeks.
8 weeks.
It was a pretty good program, and a lot of good feedback came out of that one. And it was just, especially in sales, we had used that to kind of pump a little bit the minds, and it worked. So, but today we're actually going to talk about more stuff, and we might just talk lightly about hypnotherapy and all that. But really, what today's occasion is that Robert had the idea, the discussion before to have his own book, and guess what, people? He just did. And I think the topic really is: you set up a goal, you go after it, and you make it happen. Period and out, and you'll make your mind work towards it as hard as it can be. So Robert, first of all, congratulations on the book, and we'll ask about the name and all that stuff in a minute, but really that is an achievement. That's a milestone. And many people, they want that. That's a bucket list thing. I have that on my bucket list, and I want to do it. I started, putting some stuff together, but we're not there yet. But I do know one thing: before hopefully I depart this world, I have a book, at least one.
One book with your name on it.
Yeah, I do it at least. I think my bio just that would be crazy enough to actually put enough in there. But certainly it's a not a dream. It's really something I want to achieve. And it is a good feeling just knowing that you've gone through that whole process. I've known a couple of people that have done that as a side thing, not their primary role. I mean, some people are writers and authors by default, but there are folks that are doing many things, but they decide to write a book about stuff that they're passionate about. So let's go through that challenge, and because I know it's not easy to write a book. I mean, you got to find the topic, you got to find the time, you got to figure out how to put it together, you got to get some publishing going, and get it all unpacked and ready and published. That's a whole process.
Oh, it really is.
I know. Listen, I can only imagine. So Robert, let's talk about, first of all, let's just bring our audiences back to the hypnotherapy, and then we can go into the book. I mean, you are a hypnotherapist. You help people kind of reset, I would say, and reframe their mindset and how they see things. And I know, listen, I still remember the session we had where I was live, and I actually watch it every now and then. And I do remember it was one of the best moments,
Excellent.
And, I enjoyed that. 10 minutes was pretty good. It didn't feel like 10 minutes. It felt like maybe a minute or two, but
Mhm.
but it was about 10 minutes when I watched that thing. Um, but yeah, so just to bring back again to the audiences, hypnotherapy, what is it? And then I guess that will lead right into the book, because I think that the book deals with it.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I am actually in the process of rebranding. I believe now, according to corporate record, I am no longer Twin Ravens Hypnotherapy. I am now Twin Ravens Solutions. And the reason for that is, though I still utilize hypnotherapy as my primary modality, I have started using more neurolinguistic programming, cognitive behavioral therapy, things like that, and started working more not just with wellness focused clients, but also with business and success focused clients. I discovered that a lot of my work as a hypnotherapist was working with people either growing their own business or growing professionally. And that oftentimes my work was moving more towards being a business coach than a hypnotherapist sometimes. So I decided, rather than flail around, just rebrand, open myself up a little bit. But to answer your question, hypnotherapy is basically utilizing our own resources to achieve our results. Uh, Hypnosis is, as we've discussed before, completely natural, completely a normal function of the human mind. It isn't metaphysical, it isn't mind control, nothing like that. It is simply accessing the subconscious mind. And the thing that I emphasize, no matter what your goal may be, the conscious mind is the goal setter. It is what determines your goal. The subconscious mind is the goal getter. So no matter what it is that you want, your subconscious mind has to be in line, whether it's stopping smoking, losing weight, overcoming trauma, or making more money. Your subconscious mind has to be on that page. And hypnotherapy basically bypasses that filter that exists between the conscious and subconscious mind. That is the reason those two things can't communicate, and allows us to speak directly to the subconscious mind to create new associations, new understandings of our reality and our situations. And that's kind of what led me to write the book. Is it's kind of a primer on understanding the subconscious, because that's really the crux of my work, is helping my clients, be it in a one-on-one or a group setting, understand their subconscious, understand how it communicates, how to communicate with it, and how to create change utilizing that. Because change that comes from a subconscious level is easy. It is simply the way of things. It is not an effort. And it's really whatever you are seeking it for. Like I said, stopping smoking, business success, the number of areas that hypnotherapy can help with is huge, because as I'm a fan of saying, it's all in your head. And that's actually what my book's called, because it really is just all in your head. All reality, all perception of yourself and the world around you, it's just up here. That's that's why you can ask three different people who saw something happen what they saw, and they'll tell you three different things, because our perception of reality, of ourselves, of all of those things are just that. It's ours and only ours. And it's understanding that really helps to achieve whatever it is that you're wanting to. Because if you find that you aren't getting the results you want with whatever it may be, probably your subconscious that's standing in your way.
Wow. First of all, I love that. I know you used that expression before. It's on your head,
Mhm.
and it is all in our heads. And I, I couldn't. I have to say that I'm sorry, folks. It's I'm a fan, I guess, but really, the Matrix concept keeps coming back over and over in our world of reality. because you're right. I mean, everyone is looking at this world based on their own, perception and vision. I mean,
Mhm.
I mean, I always refer to it as like, we in a virtual game, for example, you go in with multiple players, and yeah, you share the same space, the same, event, whatever it is that you're doing, you interact, but you only experience it through that visor and your emotion, and your senses, if there are advanced ones that actually can give you some sense of touch and things. But really, it's not a very far-fetched idea from where we are. And you're right, like three people can put three different stories for the same event. And
Mhm.
any we have this all the time where we hear like, oh, and I refer to this as a fun piece, because like you talk about two guys or two gals or like a couple of guys, and girls, mixing, like, oh, he's cute, she's cute, he's good, he's good, I I like him, I don't like him. And you know what's funny, because everybody's looking at that person differently, and they
Mhm.
see them from the way they are, and they actually making that judgment based on their own view, and how their brain is actually perceiving that. But in reality, that person is still the same.
Yeah,
you know
exactly. It's just
so
what you choose to perceive about that situation based on what's in your own head, your own experiences, your own biases and prejudices, and all of those things, which we all have. It's how the human brain works. We the mind exists to create association. That is how we learn every single thing that we learn. It's all association. This thing goes with this thing. And that's neurology. That is the way our neurons clump information together. And that's what's fascinating me about my work so many times, is that it's not very theoretical. It is neurology. It is observable. And that's one of the interesting things that has really come up with hypnotherapy in probably past couple of decades, is it's always been this idea that we had, this theoretical thing that we kind of could observe. But we developed technology eventually through like organic biofeedback devices that allow us to directly observe trance, to directly monitor what is happening. And because of that, we've established the reality of the situation, that this is not a theoretical thing, that it is a completely tangible phenomenon. Why it exists, I don't know. I'm always a big fan of telling my clients that I don't know why this thing is in our head, why we have this feature, but it's there, and you can absolutely use it to your advantage.
Robert, I'm listening to you, and I think we've alluded to this in one of the previous shows, and that was, in terms of marketing and
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how, the brain is educated in a way, or I guess information is flown into your brain
Mm-hmm.
through these devices, and then the media uses that. The marketing actually is a big piece of that. It's all about how we see it. Social media now, we see it
Mm-hmm.
more than ever. People are and essentially we're all born kind of in a clean slate. I mean, everybody is blank. Brains are like, empty. They have some information that is innate, I guess, the basic information, but a lot of it is being put in by surrounding events, and
Hot, yeah.
and everything else is being told to you, told to you, or taught, whether at school, at home, and through, your environment. And that's
Mm-hmm.
how you mentioned biases and things like that. That's how we all develop those things. And
Yeah.
everybody is, you can take the same person, and raise them in a different environment. They'll have a different perception of that world. Yet, if they were probably, put, and I think there has been experiments with that, where people have been put to two people, same environment, put them in
Mm-hmm.
different places, and they learn different things. And that's really what it is. Now, some abilities are there. Some people have different tendencies, but I think everybody's got the capabilities of being programmed in a way, and and
Of
and
course.
really, that's all there is. I mean, we're not very different from our computers that we've developed.
Oh no, not at all.
The template on our
Yeah.
on our back platform. So,
No, absolutely. I mean, we every technology we create kind of mimics the world around us in a way, and computers are no different. And you mentioned the things we learn as a child, and one of the fascinating things I've learned doing this for a living is that initial programming that we learn in about the first 10 years, give or take. pretty much mandates all of our life, all of our problems, all of the things that work for us, against us, whatever have you, are a product of those associations we made as a child many, many, many times. And that's always fascinating to me, that no matter, it seems, what somebody is coming to me for, the question always has to come up: tell me about your childhood. Tell me where you first started creating these associations. Because that's really what the first part of my work is, more than anything. I'm all about finding out why, the core root reason as to why. And that why is almost always in childhood. And even for something like habit control, for smoking, it was an association that was created somewhere. It was an idea that stuck in your head, and you can change those ideas. That is what hypnotherapy is for. And normally we can't change those ideas. It's like whenever I work with somebody trying to develop a small business, I always ask them, well, why can't you just do this thing? Why can't you make yourself pursue more? Why can't you make yourself focus on this? You consciously want to. So what's standing in your way? And there's this idea I talk about a lot. It's a fancy word called homeostasis. And that is basically your normal. It is what you assume of yourself and the world around you. It is the reason that we stay in abusive relationships. It is the reason that we become successful beyond our circumstances. Because what we paint as our normal, our expectations of reality, are very powerful. It's the reason we all know people who seem to stay poor, yet they don't go below a certain level. They always maintain that level of survival. And we also know people sometimes that are wealthy, that regardless of their poor decision making, always seem to maintain a certain level of wealth. And it's that homeostasis. It is that assumption that we have of our reality. And that assumption is what allows the subconscious to work in the background to maintain that reality, regardless of what our conscious decisions are. Your subconscious will absolutely sabotage you, and it will absolutely help you in unseen ways that you don't even notice, because you are not generally communicating with your subconscious mind. You can't. There is a filter in place that prevents you from doing so many times.
Consciousness is a world on its own. I mean, I think we think we know everything based on what our conscious mind is telling us and acting and behaving with. But really, I think a lot of us is really the subconscious piece of it.
Okay.
I think, I mean, just sometimes you think about it, like, it's like the real us is behind the scenes, operating in the back.
Yeah, your conscious mind is only about 10 to 20% of your neurological processes. Is a very, very small amount. And all your conscious mind is in charge of is like logic, willpower, decision making, very present in the moment things. When it comes to memory, association, learned behavior, emotion, and even automatic processes like heartbeat, skin temperature, all of those things, they're controlled by the subconscious mind. They are things you do not have immediate control over. And it's a lot for some people to hear that 80 to 90% of what's going on in your mind, you are completely unaware of most times. But that's kind of where my work comes in, because you don't have to be unaware of what's going on in your subconscious mind. You can speak to your subconscious mind and be spoken to by it. It's just, how do you interpret that? A good example is dreams. And while not all dreams have viability for my work. There is a certain phase of dreams that does. They're called venting dreams. They're the dreams that occur right before you wake up. And those are generally the subconscious mind trying to communicate with you. Now, it is not doing that clearly. It is doing that in the ways that it knows how. Because your subconscious mind doesn't speak language, doesn't speak words like your conscious mind does. It speaks metaphor, symbol, emotion, memory. It speaks an association. And that's part of the reason that, because I've known people that love those like dream dictionary things. That is the dumbest thing possible. And the thing I point out with that is open one of those up and turn to snakes. And tell me what snakes mean. Generally, they're some bad omen, some sign of something, some unseen danger in your life or whatever. All right. What if someone raises snakes? What if somebody loves snakes more than anything? That's still going to mean bad news? Is that still going to be ominous? No, because that's not their association. And that's what those dream dictionaries and any attempt to apply broad thinking to the subconscious misses, is that association is a deeply personal thing. Most people like dogs. They're fun. They've been by our side for 40,000 years or so. Unless you don't, unless you have an association that says that dogs can't be trusted and are a danger, which people absolutely do have. So there is, and this is part of what trips people up so much. What the hard part about being human is, there is no universality to the experience other than death. That's about the most universal human experience. It starts and it ends. Everything that happens in between that is completely unique to you. And we struggle with that because there is no universal meaning. There is no unifying thing. Yeah, we live, we die, we breathe, we eat, but those are all different things. Like, we all view all of those things and feel very differently about all of those things. And so it's that lack of a universal experience that people struggle with a lot, because meaning is something that's tricky to find. And when we don't have that meaning, when we don't have that definition we put in front of our reality, it's hard. You can't ask someone to do something meaningless. It's for those of people listening who had a hard time with math in school. Why did you have a hard time in math? That's because you couldn't see the point of putting the alphabet in math and things like that. At least that's why I didn't like it. But it's that perception that lets us see that individual experience, and it's finding that individual perception and experience, which I do talk about a bit, that becomes so vital. Why are you doing what you do? Why are you here? And it's kind of like that age-old joke question, what's the meaning of life? And we assume that it's an unanswerable question because, again, there is no universal meaning. But that's not true. You get to pick it. You get to determine why you're here, why you're doing what you're doing, what you're even doing, even. And everyone's meaning is different. I always like to ask at some point when I'm working with somebody, why are you here? What is your purpose to life? What are you wanting to do? What are you wanting to experience? And realizing that really helps some people, helps a lot of people, helped me. Because once you discard the idea that there is some universality to things, that all people are united in something, but instead it is your individual purpose, you can find it then. When you stop looking into the crowd, you look inside, when you look in your own head, you can find your purpose, you can find your meaning. And once you find your meaning, everything gets a little easier. because that's kind of your guiding light, so to speak. It is the reason which you do something. Because try doing anything with no reason. It's not easy. If you try to write a book with no reason, practically impossible. And it's probably not going to be a very good book anyway. It's just going to be wandering and strange. So finding your reason, finding your meaning, be it in life or in business, whatever have you. The business aspect is a big thing for the meaning. Because a lot of the clients I work with business, I ask them, why do you want this? I want more money. You can get more money a lot of ways. Why do you want more money? What circumstances in your life are you wanting to improve? Because money is just the means to do something. The money is not your purpose. Your purpose is something beyond that you believe that money can afford you. And voicing that is essential to finding success, because no one ever found success chasing money. They might tell you they were chasing money, but that's not true. They're chasing something else. It's finding out what that thing is that somebody's chasing, what your, well, I guess it'd be professional meaning is. It's not money. It's just the things that money gets you. And what is that? Is it a house, a boat? Is it a car? Is it safety? Is it security? Is it just want to eat better? Do you want to attract different people? Whatever have you. And once you realize that, once you are able to put voice to that and accept that, that's when you can start finding that success. That's why people chase money all day and don't get it, because they're just chasing a thing we made up. When you are wanting better, different, be it a house, a wife, or whatever, anything at all. And when you can understand that it's conditions that your subconscious wants to change, money means nothing to your subconscious. It is a way of measuring your circumstances to it. That's it. It sees a big number in your account and it thinks safety. It thinks car. It thinks comfort. That's it. It doesn't care if the number goes up. It only cares about the safety, the circumstances, and the pleasure that it brings you. Because the subconscious is all about focusing on its pleasure and avoiding its pain. And that's one of the interesting things about creating change, because those two concepts mean something different to your subconscious. Because to your subconscious mind, pain is something different, while pleasure is the familiar. And you can see how that becomes difficult when you're wanting to change your circumstances, because your subconscious mind will do whatever it can to maintain the familiar, until you begin to change that homeostasis, to change your perception of self and what your circumstances allow you.
Robert, I'm listening, and it's a lot, and you really, you try to analyze everything. Like when you're hearing stuff, you try to break it down based on your knowledge and your skills and your abilities. And so that's like to your point, that's the little piece of it, and the back piece of it is bigger. And almost it sounds like, again, the mind, the subconscious mind, is really in charge of everything.
100%.
And only that, like you as I'm listening to you, and or maybe the audience is also, I mean, we can literally easily get into the realm of the unknown. We can get into the realm of the quantum physics. We can go into the philosophical, approach of things. Because to your point, you talked about death, as in it's like the end that's known, that's pretty much shared by everyone. But even in that, actually, if you think about it, like nobody came back and say like how they experienced that moment on their own. Yep. And so we think we know what happens, and
there's a lot of theories.
a lot of theories, and if we just go, let's say we go religious, right? Everybody's got a different perspective on how that looks back, from that point on, and no one is, and it's, you know, there is a very similarity between, you mentioned dream and death. Are it's almost like when you. I always have this question to people, like, can you set up your time to go to sleep? I mean, not to go to sleep, to actually, shut down. No one knows when they go to sleep. You can lay down for a minute, and then all of a sudden you're gone. You don't know when that moment is. Even if you wanted to write it down, you can never do it. And then you cannot probably clock up and just, like, I'm going to wake up at 5 o'clock unless the alarm kicks in. You're not going to wake up. I mean, maybe there's a coincidence that happened, but it's not. You talked about those dreams, especially the ones that are vivid before you wake up. I mean, literally, you can remember them. That as soon as you wake up, it's like,
for a bit.
For a bit, yeah. You got about, like, a few minutes. Like, you can still see that scene, but then again, you could not possibly comprehend what that scene was, or you can't. And it looked so real at the time. At least your perception of it was real. And then until, like, well, it's reality. I'm back to this world. So again, it is still the unknown. There's a lot of it that we are not comprehending. I think our minds are not even getting close enough to understanding the power of it. And I love what you said about purpose. We have a purpose in life, and you're not just created ad hoc, and we have something, or at least for those that people in creation, believe in creation, we're created somehow for a reason. But those that don't, you still have to have a purpose. I mean, you cannot be just be here. I mean, just like, oops, you're a fluke. We're not a fluke on this world. I mean, there's logics behind things, and the fact that we have a mind and subconscious, how it works, creates the idea that there's more than what it meets the eye, as we say, right? So it's pretty tense stuff. I mean, like, it's really, like, you can't really get your head around it.
I mean, we've been trying to figure this out with philosophy for
centuries,
3,000 years.
Yeah.
Like, we've been. It is the eternal question as to why we are here, why we think, why we are aware that we think, and I talked about existentialism a little bit, and that's kind of the core of my practice and how I approach things with people. And in existentialism, there's something called the existential givens. And these are the 4 things that every human being struggles with. And it's not necessarily all 4. Sometimes it's all 4, sometimes it's just 1. But it's death, meaninglessness, isolation, and I can never get the 4th one offhand. Death, meaningless, isolation, and freedom. Freedom and responsibility. Because everyone thinks, oh, freedom is the ultimate gift. Is it? Is it really?
It could be anarchy.
Well, because what comes with freedom? What does freedom even mean? It means responsibility. And people avoid that. People don't want responsibility. And that's one of the things that needs to be understood approaching things from that existentialist viewpoint, is that freedom and responsibility aren't necessarily positives. They are something that you view as something to struggle with, like death, like isolation, like a lack of meaning. It is something to come to terms with, something to understand. And especially in this country where we're told from the cradle to the grave that freedom is the number one greatest thing. What does that mean? What does that actually mean? Well, it means you're in charge of your own decisions. And people struggle with that. Because a big part of us still has that child inside of our head that wants direction, that wants to have the way pointed out towards us. And when we don't have that, which most of us don't, then you struggle with it. You kind of rail against your own freedom. And that shows through in many fascinating ways. Any reaction to any of the givens show up in fascinating ways. Some people who struggle with death take up really extreme behavior to try to come to terms with it. I've worked with people who had a severe, I guess you'd call it, neuroses about death, that their hobbies were risky because they were trying to, I guess, come to terms with that struggle against the end. People who struggle with isolation, as I've already said, struggle with meaninglessness. When we feel included, when we have an idea of, or a comfort around our own eventual end, and when we can find the purpose to the time that we're here, it becomes a little easier. And when we don't have those things, it becomes a little harder. And it's the same with personal, it's the same with business. It's why when we have such a hard time doing a job we don't see the point of. Like, we've all worked just miserable jobs. Almost everyone I know has had a job they hated. And why'd you hate it? Well, you didn't see the point, be it because of what you were having to deal with, how much you were getting paid, whatever have you. You just didn't see the point. You didn't have your meaning in that. And when we lack that meaning, well, it's a little difficult to do that job. And think of that lack of meaning that you've had with work before, and how difficult it was to face that work and apply it to life. And that's how some people feel. That same feeling that you had not understanding why you're getting up and going to work is something that people feel when they wake up having to even face reality. And the way you fix that is finding that meaning, finding that purpose, finding that definition to your reality. Got a little off on philosophical end there, but
No, that's pretty cool. And I mean, you really enumerated a few things that are, I guess, the essential pieces of our lives, right? I mean,
mm-hmm.
you want to live with a meaningful life, and that's at least what we wish for and we hope for. You
Mm-hmm.
definitely want to feel the perception of freedom, and I'm framing it that way for a purpose,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think there's such thing as freedom, true freedom.
No.
You are still defined by the whatever circumstance you're in, and there's
Mm-hmm.
you have a perception of freedom. You can think you're free, but you're not. I mean,
Yeah.
we might be free, let's say, from I guess a country. Let's say you mentioned the country, right? We have that perception of being free, but you're not really in control 100%.
Yeah.
There's controls behind. You cannot do whatever you want, really.
Yeah.
And even if, let's say, we lived in a free world, I mean, literally, like, you can do whatever you want. You still cannot live beyond the rules of nature, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not really that free.
You are always constrained by something.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, it's really not. I mean, we might have free will and free decision making, because you can make a choice. And whether, again, we mentioned religion earlier, you can believe in religion or not believe. It doesn't matter. You have that ability. You can believe that whatever you want. You can believe that you're an alien, and that's okay too.
Some people do.
I'm saying, I mean, that's fine too. But again, because you have the ability to do it, but what does that mean? See, that's really, and again, that's where it gets philosophical and gets a little like, woo, where are we going here? But that's the realm of the subconscious. Is
Mm-hmm.
bigger than we can think. It's just, there's no, I think there's no, it's infinite as how it operates. I mean, when you give the percentage, that's just the ratios, but really what it's capable of, we have no clue.
No, we have absolutely no idea. And that's kind of why I like my work, is because it's on the forefront of finding that out. I'm always reading new research and new findings that have been discovered with hypnotherapy, and it's crazy stuff. It is. And more than that, the thing I always ask is, what does this imply? What does this mean? A good example of that is in my research papers that I collect. I have a study from, I can't remember if it's Johns Hopkins or UC Berkeley, but it's a major medical facility. And they did a study on how hypnosis can be used to control blood loss during surgery. What does that even mean? What does that imply? And that's the interesting thing to me, is people think hypnosis, they think uh, changing how you feel about cigarettes, or changing the foods that you eat, or changing your perception, not on your leg is bleeding less because this thing is allowing it to. Uh, there's such a thing as hypnoanesthesia that is utilized by the medical community. What happens when you're allergic to all anesthetic, like some people are? Bring in someone like me. And hypnoanesthesia is not even a rare thing. It is something that is encountered fairly commonly because there's people that are allergic to all anesthetics. And if you cannot put an anesthetic into somebody, you have to use hypnosis. And what does that even imply? Because normally with anesthesia, we're bringing somebody like that far away from death. That's one of the weird things about being an anesthesiologist. So what, you can talk someone there? Because that's all hypnosis is. Well, and I say that because hypnosis is simply advanced communication. Because what else can it be? It's not a superpower. It's not mind control. It's not metaphysical. So what else can it be but advanced communication? Because it is just me saying something to someone and creating an effect. To really kind of boil it down to its basics, but that's just communication. Me saying words to somebody else, that's just communication. And so what else can hypnosis even be defined as, if not that? Because it's not magic, like I said. So it's just talking. And yet with talking, we can maintain, or we can create the wildest things. We can control blood flow. We can create an anesthetic response. We can change the way we feel about ourselves and our behaviors simply from talking to a specific part of the mind. And that's, even as somebody that's done this for a few years, that's still just infinitely bizarre to me that we have that function in our minds, that we can just talk to each other and create change, physiological change, behavioral change. So as to how much of our communication is hypnosis, I don't know. I could probably speak for a few more hours on that one, but it is a natural part of being human. We are influenced and we are influenced by and influence others to do no end of things. And what is influence but part of the hypnotic modality, part of that strange form of advanced communication that we are all capable of, that communication that goes beyond the words that we say. Because like I said, the subconscious doesn't understand language as the conscious mind does. So when you speak to somebody, yeah, you're speaking to their conscious mind with your direct words, but you are also maintaining a different level of communication. And the fun part is you don't really know what that communication is, because until you've worked with somebody actively attempting to examine their associations, you'll never know. You'll never know how somebody else thinks and understands. And I think I addressed this in the book, but one of the strange things about being human that has to be accepted is you will never, ever, ever understand another human being. And another human being will never, ever, ever understand you. We can sympathize. We can use our own experience to empathize with another individual, but it is literally impossible to understand how and why another person thinks, because our experiences are completely unique. That same thing that make three different people see three different things for one situation, you'll never understand how someone got to that point. You can logically, but you can't ever think as someone else, because we will only ever exist inside of our own head. You cannot put yourself inside of someone else's perception and understand it. It's impossible. It is not something a person can do. All we can do is relate.
Talking about my job here.
Sorry.
Woo! It was like my mind is actually started to smoke right now. I got to get a handle on this thing, right? But it's so powerful that you're on the hypnosis side. You can literally activate, I guess. You reach deeper than the average person. You talked about regular influence, which it reaches to people, and they tend to mimic and act on those influences. But you're beyond that. You go deeper into the mind, and it's almost like you go and you have like the code, to trigger some elements, that are not being activated regularly.
The way that so I work with a lot of computer-oriented people, and the way that the way I explain it to them is hypnosis is basically just accessing your brain's root shell. It is accessing your programming that lays under your user interface. And anytime you want to create change in a program, that's where you have to go. You can't do it by interacting with the user interface. Generally, you have to go into its source code. You have to go into its root shell and actively alter that programming from there. And that's how we learn how to be human, is altering that programming. We go through life not choosing our associations because we think it's not something we get to choose. But it is. It is absolutely something we get to choose. For an example, if I have a client who's afraid of dogs, they didn't choose to have that fear of dogs, but they can make the choice to get rid of it. They can make the choice to create a new association in their mind and view that thing differently. And for many people, that thing, that association that needs to be changed and that thing that needs to be viewed differently, it's just ourselves. Because we are part of that perception too. We are part of that biased understanding. In the same way we apply our biases to the world around us, we also apply that bias to the world inside us as well. And it's changing that bias that sometimes is vital to creating effective change.
Robert, you said something that ultimately it's in the book, the idea that we can never understand being somebody else's mind except relate to them based on the set of circumstances and understandings that we have. So some of us may have better understandings based on experiences, but that's about it. To your point, no one, and this is actually true. For example, if I told you I was sick, I mean, let's take the example of COVID. A lot of people had COVID. I had COVID. I can describe what my symptoms were. I can describe the feelings, the pain, all the stuff. But it doesn't mean that it's exactly what everybody else experienced, in their own way. Pain is perceived differently from everyone. Some people have different thresholds, whatever. You can relate to it, like, oh, I feel your pain. You don't really.
Yeah,
you feel. I feel your pain through a pain that I experienced.
You have experienced pain prior in your life, and you can use that to relate to somebody. But you can't understand it because, as you said, their perception of pain is very, very, very different. The understanding of pain is very different. Be it physical, mental, whatever.
Well, here's a good one for you, Robert. So I happen to have had 2 kidney stones over the last 20 years. Yikes. And so you always hear the expression, is the nearest thing to delivering a baby. But is it really? I have never experienced delivering a baby. No man has ever done that. So there is no way for us to actually.
How can we even make that correlation?
Exactly. But it's an expression that's randomly used. And I've heard that many times being
Everyone's heard it. That's one of those kind of like universal colloquialisms we hear throughout life. Oh, passing a stone like having a baby.
It is painful. I mean,
Who
listen,
determined that?
It is.
Oh yeah, I'm
Really,
sure it sucks. I don't ever want to deal with it, but like,
yeah, but
even
it's
having a baby is not a universal experience.
that's right.
I've known women who had zero drugs and just
Yeah,
immediately done. I've known women who had no end of narcotic support that still described the most nightmarish experience of their life. It's different for everyone. Like I've got a lot of tattoos, as people have noticed, and I used to be a tattoo artist. You would have some people that didn't
right.
move, didn't blink, and then you would do the same tattoo in the same spot to somebody else, and it was utter torment to them. And there is no universal experience. That's it's just understanding that, I mean, really a lot of understanding can be had by simply accepting that there is no universality to the human experience, because that allows you to accept someone else's experience more readily. Because so how many times have like, so you've heard somebody say like, oh, that's hard, and you think to yourself, no one hard for me, it's not even that hard to do, like driving or something like that. Well, for them it is, because you can't understand what it's like to perceive and operate as them. So but once you understand that you don't understand, and more importantly that you can't understand, your only option is to accept that that is that person's experience. And through that acceptance, you can actually kind of simultaneously change the way that you view others and change the way that you view yourself, because those things are directly related. If you meet somebody that is just a prick to every single person they meet, that person probably hates themselves a lot. The same way that they express themselves to others is the way that they express themselves to themselves. And that changes when they change how they feel about themselves. And I say this personally, because the way I viewed myself was reflected in the way that I view others, and still is. And it is apparent how someone feels about themselves by the way that they, I use the word understand, by the way they perceive others. And that if you want to change those circumstances, you don't do it by attempting to understand other people. You do it by attempting to understand yourself. It's like that old Greek saying, the first foremost understand thyself. That's all you can ever do. You will never understand, as we've stated, someone else. You can understand yourself. It's hard. It takes some work, but you can begin to understand yourself, because that's not always the case. I had to learn how to understand myself, how I thought, how I acted, how I believed, all of these things, when I just thought they were a given before. Of course, we all understand ourselves. We're ourselves. Only we don't at all. And we can learn. And the fun trick to that is, as we learn, that does help us empathize with other people. It won't help us understand them. Again, you can't, but you can have sympathy. You can understand that you don't understand, and just use that to accept the way somebody feels, somebody thinks, somebody experiences, and allow yourself to not be so judgy about the experience of others, and by proxy, yourself. So again, it's a mirror we all hold up.
Robert, that is the biggest mistake I think we all make, is that we never take the time to know who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I mean, I can speak for myself. Although I am like you, I do ask the questions like, am I bad? Am I good? What am I doing? How am I affecting people? I actually do have these discussions. but I learned to actually do that
I
because
must say
I've
it's a
always,
thing you have to learn how to do.
yeah, I mean, I practiced it because I've always, you know, see, I want to do good. I want to be good. I want to do
Hmm.
stuff, but I want to know what does that mean,
Yeah.
to the people and me. And to do that, you're going to ask question. Did I do something here? What is it? Or what's my behavior like? And so I do ask questions, and I don't know, and I can't judge here, or globalize here, but I don't know if everybody's doing that exercise where they actually, because I think the first thing we look at, is everybody else but
Hmm.
us. We look at
Hmm.
everybody's faults, but we never point, here. Although, as when we point at people, there's like they said, the other
Yeah.
three or four. That expression does actually apply. We
Mhm.
look at the others, but we never look here. And it starts from here. I think whatever we experience, whatever we use as I guess, a judgment, programming,
Mhm.
is a reflection of how we operate ourselves. To your point,
Absolutely.
we're not, because once you start understanding, then you're like, you talked about responsibility and accountability like earlier. That's the thing. Like, we don't want that responsibility. I'd rather to just, oh, this guy, that gal, this, that, the other, judge the whole world. And then when it comes to you, like you're like, you have this barrier, like you don't want anybody to judge you. Well, similarly, if you don't want people to judge you, don't judge people. Because
Yeah.
to your point, their circumstances made it very different. And you're right. It could be a simple thing to you, not as simple to them. You
Hmm.
know, you mentioned the dogs, right? I mean, many people love dogs, but you might just have this phobia. And it could be nothing. I'm sure you might just get close to a dog and just be friendly, and then all of a sudden
Hmm.
you fall in love with them. You don't know that. But that's the thing. Like, people may refuse to even attempt to
Hmm.
find out what's going on here. They may not be able to ask questions. Sometimes they don't want to seek help. That's the other thing. If you
We're
can't figure out yourself, you got to figure out help, right?
Yeah, and we're kind of a lot of people are afraid to look inside. A lot of people that's a fear we have to get over, and that's why it took me a little bit of time in life to actually turn inward and to begin to address what was going on in my own head, because we're scared to do that. We just want to look outside, but when we look inside, things change, and it affects the way we view the outside world, the people, and the world around us. Again, this is something I say from personal experience. The way I viewed the world around me 10 years ago is very different than I view the world around me today. And I view it with a much more sympathetic eye and ear. And the reason for that is not because I changed my opinion and perception of the world around me actively. It's because I changed my perception of the world inside me actively, and that changed that perception. Because again, everything's all in your head. The way that you view the world, or the way that you view yourself, is part of the way you view the world. If you don't trust yourself, you don't trust the world, because you think everyone's like you. Because we go around projecting our own thoughts, feelings, and beliefs on everyone else around us. It's why you see so many people that the second they encounter somebody that doesn't think like them, they lose it, because you've just challenged their perception of reality. You've made them have to consider that maybe everyone isn't exactly like me. And that's hard for some people to deal with, because that's our only understanding that we have of other people, is ourselves. And if we do not have that understanding of ourselves, we don't have that understanding of others. And so we end up very limited in our scope of what is acceptable thinking and behavior, because they're not like us.
Well, that goes to that, what is normal, what is not normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Defining that. But it's amazing because when you said, you look at your world, your inner self, right? Yourself. I think maybe we all are afraid to dig in and find out who we really
Oh,
are.
oh yeah.
It's like that expression, like life is like a chocolate, like a box of chocolate
Yeah.
in the movie. Well, you never know what you're gonna get. Well, you never know what you're gonna get when you can dig in
And you
deeper.
really don't. You will learn things surprising. You will learn things disturbing. You will learn things inspirational. Looking inside of you is a hard thing. working on yourself is a hard thing, but it is the most beneficial thing that you can do to yourself for yourself. And that's really what it is. It's for yourself. And when you take the time to look inward, to understand why you think the way you think, to understand why you see the way you see, then you can change it. If there is something about yourself you don't like, being human is not a concrete thing. People can change. People can change at their very core. And it's just requires you to do some kind of difficult work. And in my experience with my work, it's occasionally a very emotional thing because people hide from themselves. People hide things from themselves. People forget about things or just kind of put it by the wayside. And that's kind of what leads to our problems. It's not until we look at that thing and examine it and resolve it. It's like having a problem with your car. You could ignore your check engine light all day because the car still runs, but eventually you're going to have a problem. Eventually that thing's going to start smoking or sparking or whatever have you. And now you're going to have to stop everything that you're doing, figure out what's going on. Same thing with us. It's why we seek out help, because sometimes all it takes is an outside perspective. I cannot tell you how many times I have heard the phrase, I've never thought of that, or I've never seen it like that before. Because it's just, again, all our perception. We only ever have our perception. But when we look outside of that, we can see things that maybe we didn't before.
We have to open up, to that there is more than what we know. And I mean, this we can talk about it. I mean, obviously we're coming out to the end of the time here, but think about it this way. You talked about biases earlier, and we all have some level of bias, right? But when you think about it, the more you interact with the world, for example, and cultures and religions and stuff, you have less and less and less of the bias, right? Because now you're exposed to all these elements and you see what it is for what it is. Not because you're told a certain way for any particular, group, ethnicity, religion, or business type or anything, right? You start making your own informed decisions on these things as opposed to just what you're, and that changes the dynamics. And it's like, wow, it's true fact. If people who have never traveled or interacted with other crowds around the world or been around the world, for example, they have very limited perception of what that looks like.
Oh, I know. I live in a very small town in the rural South, and you see that on display all the time because I live in a place that 90% of the town has never gone more than 10 miles in any direction. And you see that in their thinking, in their perception, and it's wild. And then you meet somebody who has experienced different cultures, different perceptions, different ways of thinking. And it's totally different because they have realized that very, very, very important thing, which is not everyone's like me. Everyone's experience is different, be it cultural, societal, personal, whatever have you. It's just different completely from the core. And learning that, accepting that will help you grow, will help you understand more about yourself and others in the world around you, which again are all connected.
Robert, listen, I mean, we're I don't know where the hour went, but it went. So
it went somewhere.
It went somewhere. But so a couple of things before we end today's show. One is the book.
Yes.
It's certainly a book not only just to read, but also to apply, right? It's an applicable book. So this is something that you would get and use some practical tools from it.
Every chapter has a corresponding exercise, a way to take the things spoken about in that chapter and actively begin applying them in your own life to create that change. And that was the important thing that I wanted to put in my book. I didn't just want to talk about these things. I like proof. I like tangible results. And I thought for a long time, how can I put those tangible results in my book? And it was that. It was just walking people through those exercises. And I've had excellent feedback from people following along with the exercises, because it's getting in touch with your subconscious. It's beginning to understand those rules of operation. And they're all lessons I've done. They're all exercises I've done. Even all of my work, I never ask someone to do something that I haven't done. So it's absolutely one of those things you can follow along with.
Love it. Well, I know I personally experienced some of the exercises you have, and we've done those in those sessions. I've done them also with you, and I know that stuff works because it does. Every time you do an exercise, you do see the real outcomes that you're looking for. And now you have to apply, and you have to also really do it correctly. And that's just, because some people say, well, it didn't work for me. Well, did you follow the actual steps?
Yeah.
There's some of that too. But so thank you for clarifying that. So it is definitely an application book, something that you can put to use, a tools book.
Absolutely.
And I'm assuming it's now available, whatever books are sold.
Well, this is the book, fancy cover. So I said it's called All in Your Head. And the best place to buy it is through my website. It's going to be the quickest way to get it. I keep a stock of books on hand. My website is twinravens.org. There is a store section where you can purchase ebooks, hardcover, softcover versions of the book. You can even purchase personalized versions. They are also available on Amazon Books. My experience with Amazon, though, is they take a while to ship you out a book because they have to print it first. So the quickest and easiest, and I believe less expensive way to get it is through my website, but it's available everywhere.
Perfect. Well, now we know, and definitely, folks, if you're watching or listening, this is definitely a book that we all should have, a copy of, because I think it will at least, open up our eyes to different things, and maybe we can discover a little bit more about how we operate.
Absolutely.
It's almost like a manual, a guide, to how we potentially can work and operate, in a more optimum way.
Exactly. And that's what I sought out to create. I sought out to create a guide, something to not just sit there and talk at somebody with, to actually take them on a journey with the book, to help them see things about themselves, about others, about the world around them. And many of the things that I've talked about today, I talk about in depth in the book. Things like meaning, finding that way to communicate with your subconscious, changing the way that you view yourself and others. All of that is things that I talk about at length in that book.
All right. Well, folks, we're coming to the end of the show here, and Robert, as always, you deliver.
Thank you very much.
And you change, the perception of things to a degree, and at least it opens up eyes, to a point where, at least we have. Sometimes you need those triggers, like, just like, ooh,
it's what I needed.
Yeah, and thank you for doing what you're doing, because you're sharing that, and I get excited about it personally, because it gives me that, like, I got to do some more of this. And I think people can potentially just see a difference in their lives by just even thinking or hearing stuff you said, like, oh, it clicks a little bit better. Because again, out of sight, out of mind, the more we hear about things, the more we're aware of them, the more we actually can apply them, or at least use them.
Absolutely.
So Robert, don't be a stranger. We want you back again, and maybe we can do another live session of hypnosis.
Absolutely.
That would be a cool one. And this time, maybe we'll do it, really with people live, so they can join and do it with us. I don't know.
Absolutely, that'd be awesome.
If they're skeptical out there, they might see a value.
Oh, I love skeptics. They're my favorite thing.
Listen, I give up on the skepticism. tested it out, a few times,
Yeah.
and it does work. So it's not even a joke. It's real.
Yeah.
So Robert, congrats again on the
Thank
book,
you very much.
and really, all the best of luck there, and hopefully another one soon enough.
I'm actually working on another one, but
There
we'll
we
see
go. There we go.
how long that one will take to
See, now,
grind out.
now you have the bug, right?
Yeah,
Once you start, you can't stop. You got to keep going,
exactly.
right? But also, look forward to your podcast. I know, like, Hypnodivergence was the initial one, and again,
Oh,
hopefully we'll have time.
I'm still thinking of something to put together.
All
So
right,
they're
yeah,
they're
yeah.
keep an eye out. There'll probably be something in the future.
That's it. I'm always up, and ready for your programming, to join us, and to just broadcast those things out and share with the world here. So,
Awesome.
Robert, thank you so much for
Well,
your
thank
time
you for
today.
having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. And folks, that's it for today. I hope you had fun. Please do check out the website and definitely get that copy. Talk soon. Bye for now.